All right, it's me, Ashley Keller Williams Real Estate. We're continuing our journey through Backdoor Revolution. I mean, this is starting to get good. Okay, like this chapter, I think it's a lot like the design chapter. It's called Zoning Barriers. Okay, so when he wrote this book, right? You have to remember it's like a little bit old. He said that there were communities that outright banned ADUs. Okay. And he said that only 40% of municipalities allowed ADUs back in the 90s. Okay, I think that's changed a whole lot. Okay, it's changed a whole lot. And, I can speak specifically for our area. They're allowed. Okay, so, it's great, right? And he kind of goes into the barriers. Like, hey, what are the reasons why people might not do them? Here are the big ones that he came up with. Owner occupancy requirements, off-street parking requirements, conditional or discretionary reviews. What that means is you're going to do a development. You have to put it out there to your neighbors. Hey, this is what I'm going to do. Is it okay with you? Right. So that might, your neighbors might be like, hey, I don't want that. Okay. So, I'll kind of like touch on these a little bit. It used to be that in the city of Everett, you had an owner occupancy requirement. It used to be that if you wanted to add an ADU to your property, you'd have to occupy one of them. That's no longer the case. And there are definitely off-street parking requirements. And now I know, at least here in the city of Everett, they have made some, I don't want to call wiggle room, but there are some exceptions. I think there's some ways to get around it and to work with the off-street parking requirement, but it's a bit of a thing, right? So, you add like a 2-bedroom ADU or whatever, and then they're like, oh, you need to have 2 more parking spots, so, those kinds of situations are what he's talking about. And, I think those make it difficult, especially, there's some areas here, at least in Everett, probably in other places, where the lot size is small. So, even to get off-street parking, it's like very challenging. Like, it could be a topography issue or a lot size issue. And so it just makes it challenging. Some lots, because of their size or their topography, it may not be possible to add off-street parking. So, here's my advice to you. If you are wanting to do an ADU, check with your local area, figure out what the requirements are, work with the city or work with the county, whoever it is, and see if you can get it done. Okay. There are a couple of other restrictive things that he mentioned. He said setbacks, size limitations, minimum lot sizes, structural forms, and then sewer water connections and development fee costs. Oh man, these are so good, man. We have all this. So I could probably like speak a little bit to setbacks. I think there's some flexibility, right? They're there. You have to still have some setbacks, but depending on the lot, depending on the area, I think it's workable. I think you can make it happen. The size limits, it's a bit of a thing. I think they've loosened that up, as much as they're going to for now. So I think that will work. Minimum lot sizes, we don't necessarily have a minimum lot size here, but we do have like a lot coverage requirement. Like you can't have a certain amount of the lot covered with structure or driveways and all that stuff. So that may play into it, right? Like, so you might not have a minimum, but you do have a maximum coverage, which is kind of like a minimum, right? Because you can only be covered whatever that percent is. All right. But I'm pretty confident that the city of Everett has tried to be pretty accommodating with that. So if you're in Everett, good news for you. They've been pretty accommodating. I think actually if you add an ADU, they increase the amount that your lot coverage. So, it allows you to do a little bit more. Sewer water connections, man. We have, at least in North Everett, I think in many parts of Everett, we have a lot of older housing stock. I mean, you're probably just going to have to deal with the sewer. I know, maybe that's not what you want to hear. And, when I say that, it's expensive, right? Like if you have to add a new sewer line or something like that, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I think the issue is, maybe your sewer line being undersized, or maybe it's just in poor condition. So to add like basically, essentially we're talking about like adding another house to that sewer line. It's just too much for the existing sewer line. So it may be that you need to add something there. I think sometimes, they may even have you separately meter the water. It depends. I mean, here's the thing. It just really depends on how, it's very circumstantial. How old is your property? If your water line is original, you may want to get a new water line anyway, a water line to your original property, water line to the ADU. And then he mentions development fee costs. So those are like city impact fees. I believe the city of Everett has some, but I think for the ADUs, maybe they don't apply, but double check everything I say. You know, and then he kind of goes a little bit into depth. You know, I'll talk a little bit about owner occupancy. You know, it's not really like a huge deal. He talks a little bit about it in terms of like how the bank might see it and like, you know, how they're going to lend on it and all that stuff. And I actually think that perhaps the biggest issue with the ADU is if the bank views the ADU as a duplex. Okay. I think that's the biggest issue. Because the financing for duplexes and the financing for just a single family house is different. So does it get financed as a single family house, or does it get financed as a duplex? Does it get financed as a triplex, or does it get financed as a single family house? See, like that, I think is actually a bit more problematic, and I think it will probably surprise you, you know, how that's determined. So, you know, do your homework on it. Find out. But basically, you know, why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem because, you know, then at the end of the day, you know, when you're looking for the buyer for your property, when you decide to sell it, right, it changes your buyer pool, right? You know, like not everybody wants to go through the process of having to purchase what they thought as a single family house to purchase it now as a multifamily. Okay. I know that some of those restrictions are, you know, they've been changed a little bit, but they get changed all the time. You just, you know, it's just like, to me, it's kind of like a gray area. Like, is it beneficial or not beneficial for you? It's just going to really depend on the, you know, what the financing is like at that time. But that's the issue. And I mean, yeah, that's basically that. You know, and then he talks about like, let's see, you know, all the parking, you know, yeah, the parking is just it's a huge issue. Especially, you know, there's a lot of people that drive, and, you know, what do? You know, people want to be able to park their cars somewhere. So, I mean, you know, you have a 2-bedroom, you know, if you have 2 adults living in there, probably have 2 cars, at least, you know, so where do you put those cars? So it's just something to consider. Okay. Let's see. You know, property line setbacks, he kind of talks about that. You know, I think that's pretty straightforward. I think that, you know, the other stuff I think we've pretty well covered, you know. Oh, you know, aside from, you know, the issues with, you know, having to have your neighbor review, I think pretty much how it happens in the city of Everett is if your ADU is similarly designed to the existing house, the primary, you don't have to go through that review process. Okay. It's only if you start putting in like a unique design, right? So like, you know, you have a house that's built in 1908 or something like that. And then you try to put like a modern design ADU back there with like a shed roof or something. That's going to have to probably be approved by the neighbor. But you know what? It's okay, right? You know, you could avoid that. Right? So anyway, so that is chapter 8. I mean, I think we're moving along. I feel like we've hit on some important, you know, considerations. And as we go on, we're going to go on to the next chapter is called Impacts on a City. And so he basically is talking about like households, you know, the number of children living there, number of rentals, the character of the neighborhood. You know, obviously they're going to talk about parking. You're going to talk about, yeah. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if he brings up things about infrastructure and all that stuff. So I'm excited to continue with you. We will continue on. It is Ashley, Keller Williams Real Estate. Please like the video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.